If he's
All right, good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the October 9th meeting of the Beal Early Childhood Center Building Committee with Mr. Marciello skidding his way in. Good evening. All right. First, to review the meeting minutes of September 24th, 2018. Any comments? There aren't any. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made, excuse me, seconded to approve the meeting minutes of September 24th, 2018. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Review and act on the following bill schedules and warrants. Patrick?
There are none this evening, Mr. King.
Well done. Item 4, we will hear reports, review, and act on the following matters. We will put off hearing from our owner's project manager because he is stuck in wicked bad traffic, John. We've been updated on. Wicked bad.
Every week.
Different realm. It does, yes, it does, you're right. He should come out here at lunchtime. So we'll go to 4B, report of the architect. Do we have anything from the architect this evening?
We do. Good evening. Thank you for having us again.
Of course.
Since the last time we met, we got comments back both on the schematic design submission and the DESE, the Department of Education and Secondary Education, comments, and none of the comments were of any great significance. We were able to respond to them all verbally for the SD submission, and as far as the DESE submission, they just outright approved it, so we just want to kind of congratulate the school district on the job well done there on that submission. It was very well done. Similarly with the education program statement previously, should also be commended on that. Since then, we also had a meeting with MSBA for the project scope and budget. The OPM is going to report a little bit more on that. We have the final figures as far as going forward on what the town will get from the state for the grant for construction of the new school. And what we've been working on in the meantime is we've been taking the opportunity between SD and kicking off design development to take a closer look at the overall design of the school. And last week we held a meeting with the executive group with the school district to review some of the design decisions and opportunities we've been looking at. And we've taken a closer look at some of the material selections to kind of give you guys a greater sense of what the building could look like. Once again, like we showed you last time when we showed you renderings, it's very conceptual in nature. Nothing is finalized. We welcome your input of any sort, whether you love it, whether you hate it. We definitely want to hear what you guys would have to say about it. But without anything more, we'd like to kind of give you an update on where we are with the design.
1 second. Mr. Superintendent, anything you'd like to add on the reference to MSBA?
Sure, I'll probably have more specifics when Mr. Queenie gets here in terms of some of the financials. In terms of,
Yep.
I would also concur that the team, and namely Greg Belcito and Amy Clouder, did an excellent job with the submission to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education relative to the special education programming that was accepted without any comment or question. And was pleased that the schematic design didn't have many. In terms of the, and again, I think we'll get into this more when Mr. Queenie's here, but the conversation we had, we certainly advocated for having the most participation as possible from the MSBA relative to what they would apply their percentage reimbursement to. I think the architects did an excellent job illustrating those pieces for it. I think we ended up in a better place than maybe we originally thought we were going to be in some of those cases. And again, I think that might be in Mr. Queenie's report, but we appreciate it. It was a good meeting and good outcome. And the bottom line is that project costs came down a little bit and their participation went up a little bit. So
We're over 34 million now, am I correct?
That's correct.
Great, thank you. Sean?
So we're going to kind of remind you where we were with the graphics and overall design concept, and then we're going to kind of show you some of the newer moves and opportunities we're seeing to give you a sense. So this may look familiar. This was the bird's eye view that's been kind of on some of the boards we presented to the town to use in recent events. It's been using for campaigning. As you recall, the core spaces are located in the front here and the academic wings out either side. The K classrooms are clustered in this area with a playground outside, and then we have the paved play area, another playground area, the front parking lot. And just a few other things, in case you forgot, parent pickup comes around the building through the paved play and back, and buses come in and circulate around the parking lot through this loop and underneath this canopy. So, as we had mentioned before, we were looking at masonry and a mix of some metal panel cladding. We're still looking at similar materials. We definitely want to stay with classic colors. We're looking closely at earth tones and introductions of some opportunities for some brighter colors, but still subtle in nature so that you guys they'll stand the test of time. So what we did to really give you a good sense is, rather than giving you still images, we actually have taken this building information model, brought it into a virtual reality environment, and we've recorded a video clip for you guys to review and get a sense today. I'm going to try to narrate over it. If you could kind of hold your questions to the end, I can try to go back and pause part of it if you really want to get into it, but that's what's going to start here. So those of you that it's the existing site, and there's going to be a 3D spin around. So here, what we're looking at as far as materials go, you can see the cafeteria in the reddish color, the stair towers cladded in a greener color, and then the rest of the building is, well, the academic wings is a masonry. We're looking at different masonry patterns. We want the elevations to have some life to them. We don't want it to come off overly institutional. This is a school that is being designed for young children. This is the approach. You can see the canopies there for the students to get dropped off the bus. The larger lobby element that was popping up to draw your attention, but you can see the slate patterning on that K academic wing that was just there to the right. Here, looking at the main entry again, you have the administration right here. We have this larger element we've introduced to help you draw your attention for wayfinding to the main entrance, and then this is the kitchen end of the cafeteria. Here's an updated elevation that Natalie will speak onto more, but this gives you more of a realistic sense of what it could look like, people populating the image. And then from there we have, this is a view of the paved play area, so this is where students would get dropped off by their parents and they enter the lower lobby. This is that patterning and the elevation I was talking about. You'll see it again in more of these elevations. This is the courtyard gardens, where those community garden beds that are already currently at Beal will be housed on the new site. So this is where students will have their own grade level classroom gardens, with the academic wings kind of embracing them, and the stair tower at the end. This next view is in the main courtyard. The red metal clad piece there on the left is the art rooms. The larger volume is that media center volume coming through with the main lobby. This is also part of the media center, and then this is the two academic wings on either side embracing this courtyard that looks to the west. As you may recall, that courtyard looking west looks out over Worcester. Here's a kind of a time lapse to give you a sense of how the moon will set, and then the sun will rise over the site, looking into the courtyard, and then how that courtyard becomes filled with sunlight throughout the day. And then here is a view, actually, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, there's the moon, where this is the view looking out the media center towards the courtyard. And here, as you can see, if you can imagine looking out over Lake Quincy, over the Shrewsbury Bridge there towards the Worcester Hills, that's the view you're going to see between these two academic wings. And that's the expanse of glass looking out from the media center. So Natalie's going to explain a little bit more. As you may have noticed, the main focus was really on this main lobby portion. The academic wings really, for all intents and purposes, we looked more closely at the material opportunities of looking at different type of patterning and colors and earth tones, and kind of introducing that small pop relief of color at the stair towers and these other major core spaces. So this is going back. Netta's going to talk about this one here.
So we were just showing this, like Sean mentioned, showing what we submitted for schematic design, the main entry view that we had developed. And then I'm just going to go through a few graphics to show some more thinking we've done with the building features, and also a little bit in the interior. We're starting to develop the interior. We haven't got too far, but we've been looking a lot at like the lobby space and entry space and the core areas. We can go ahead. This is our updated main entry view is showing some changes we've done, is just looking at the main entrance and kind of looking at some color studies with the metal panel and the brick. This is looking at more of like an almond tone metal panel for the gym and cafeteria. How do you do the
Right in the middle.
light? I have to figure out the light. Okay, here we go. And then looking at still some like a brick tone for the administrative block. And then this is showing sort of what we've looked at for the main entrance. We kind of looked at adding some height and some mass to this lobby roof to draw your eye to the main entrance, make it more prominent as you approach the building. So we were wanting that to really stand out a little bit more. You can also see, we're gonna have a main canopy we're thinking would extend out of that entrance and take on sort of, we're looking at an accent color that would kind of be on the inside of this entrance wall, and that same accent color could become this main canopy color and extend out. And then here's that lower canopy that would be for bus drop-off. Getting into the interior a little bit, we cut a couple of views to show what it would look like sort of slicing through the building, looking towards, this is the cafeteria, again, green. So it's kind of looking that direction, what it would look like in the main lobby space here. You could see this sloped roof is a main design feature, starting at the main entrance with the accent wall and then kind of going through the building over the media center here at the back. So really connecting all of the core spaces from that main lobby visually and physically, with all of those core spaces kind of to be readily accessible here and visible. You can also see the main canopy extending out on this roof, kind of extending over the glass, creating an interior-exterior connection. And then there's a main stair that would kind of create a good visual connection to the lower lobby and the media center on the ground level to make this really feel like it's really connected to that main level, even though it's on the ground level. It has this double height glass, and then you can also see beyond. Here's this entrance from that recess area on the south side. That's where the parent pick up and drop off will also be on that south side. So it's all going to be very like visually connected. So that'll be nice. And I don't know if I've pointed out, that's the cafeteria here, looking south. And then looking the other direction, because this is where we put a lot of thought so far in this phase, just looking at the same kind of idea, slicing through the building. If you're looking towards the gym, that's the gym in blue, and then administration suite and nurse in the red tone. Looking at coming in the entrance, you would have a direct connection to that reception area, the administration suite here in the vestibule. Then right when you come in the building, you'll see that expansive glass. The first thing you'll notice will be that reception area to the administration suite. Also bring in a little more natural light here with the glass. And then this is the gym wall. We're thinking about possibly making this a brick because we're liking the idea of like a durable natural material possibly there. And then looking at display cases along that wall to provide a lot of display space. That was something very important in the programming phase that came out in the public areas. We want a lot of display space. And then again, you can have this nice visual connection down to the media center with another feature is a lot of glass down here, a glass wall. You have this the art room block is here, kind of could be another feature, an accent wall exposed in the media center, and then you would have this direct connection out to the courtyard behind the art rooms, and also a direct connection out to that really nice green space that's behind the media center. So we're really kind of emphasizing that indoor-outdoor connection as well as connection with all the core spaces together. So that's been what we've been developing so far. And again, the color palette, we're just really doing a lot of color studies at this point. So that's still early, but those are the main ideas.
Thanks.
Bob, what have we learned at Sherwood that we liked, that we want to make sure we bring forward? or that we might
The
want
thing
to
I wanted to
avoid?
ask is, you're using some brick, some metal panel. I understand some of the metal panel systems cost almost as much as the brick. And why wouldn't we use more brick than metal panel? Metal panel has more maintenance, you have caulking issues, dents, all that kind of thing. So the use of brick would be something more brick, because I think the cost is similar.
Correct. As far as the limits we're looking at right now, as you can imagine, we're probably 60, maybe 70% masonry to kind of give you a sense on the exterior cladding. So we are conscious of this, and we are trying to use it conservatively and sparingly in that sense. And more areas of greater importance, drawing people's attention to, we've looked at introducing the metal. So we are aware of this. We do feel similarly about it. And we can continue to look at other options to introduce masonry should we
I
come
agree
up
with-
against it budget-wise. But
Both at Sherwood and the high school, we've got some dents.
Oh, yeah.
We're experiencing
Yep.
areas that we have to recaulk, so.
Yep.
And if it gets damaged, you can never really match colors.
No. Yeah.
So, it's a favorite.
If we're so fortunate as to get the 2 votes we need to move forward, I would appreciate that as we get into the real costing phase, that we have the estimated cost of the X that was carried through this process, and then of any Y or Z other options, add alternates. Excuse me, a table that costs a little more or a little less in and of itself is insignificant, but if you're buying 100 tables before you know it, and a countertop material. So just as we're going through this, obviously there were assumptions made to get us to a certain cost number.
Correct.
And we simply can't go over that. So what I'd like to do is figure out how we have alternates that actually allow us to save money as we work through these levels of specificity and take maintenance into mind as we move forward. Any other comments from the flyabout?
Just have a couple questions.
Sure, John.
Will we be under IEEC 15, which takes effect next October, I'm told? That's the energy code.
Yes. No, I don't. That's what was going through my head when you first said, yes, we will be. As far as insulation goes, we're already planning on going above and beyond. We recently did a project, we toured with some of the school district representatives, Nelson Place, where we have super insulation in not only the walls, but in the roof structure also. We're doing this not only for overall energy savings in the long-term planning, but also because it helps greatly with our LEED certification. So we're heading towards LEED Silver certification in version 4. So what this extra insulation also allows us to do is to downsize the HVAC loads. So therefore, being able to pick smaller units, saving some money there, having some greater efficiencies. So all around, these were things we discussed and were looked at as great options for the town. We can further review them if we think that the cost isn't worth it in the long run, but I think our models will show that it really will turn out the best. So as far as meeting IECC 2015, I don't foresee it being an issue, given the current track we're looking at for insulation values on this project.
Okay, I'm told that efficiency of mechanical systems is getting insane in 2015
Okay.
version, so I just...
Yeah, bringing it up.
The media center, as media becomes more electronic, should we have all that glass? Is glare a concern for video screens?
So the answer is yes. So I mean, the technology is getting better and better with screens as far as glare goes. But the overall expanse of the media center, it's only a third of it really is being engaged by that expanse. And the other thing we really have going for us is that direct glare coming in this is looking west. That throughout most of the school day, the sun is not going to come around far enough to get into that media center till, actually kids are probably almost out 2:45, 3 o'clock dismissal for this age group.
30.
And then I know you have your extended day and, it might impact them a little bit, but overall, given the way we've kind of created that element with the lobby, it's actually shading a lot of that southern exposure and trying to look more west into the north to bring some sunlight in there. So, but the glass really is only about 1/3 of the overall space too, that one little slot there, because then the other 2/3 here has limited exterior exposure.
Any other questions? Okay. I guess Paul remains.
Well, I can speak to this, but he has the handouts, and I wanted to pass out the handouts because I
All
think,
right, why don't we just take a 5-minute break and give him some time to get here?
okay.
We can stretch our legs.
Should I make some copies in case 5 minutes he's not here and we want to go
Well, we can
forward?
wait till 6.
Please?
We can wait till 6 minutes.
Okay,
So we'll just take a 6-minute recess.
okay.
We'll come back into session now at
Cohesive
6:26. Paul has arrived. Good evening, Paul, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I
That's
apologize for the inconveniencing the committee.
No problem. We'll now go to 4A and hear our report from the owner's project manager regarding schedule of financials and other related matters.
Well, we, since the committee last met 2 weeks ago, we had ongoing discussions with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. We had submitted a project budget to them based upon the cost we anticipated and estimated, but what we weren't sure about was the MSBA's, how they would deem various things as eligible or ineligible, and we estimated, made the best estimate that we could, and as it turned out, through their review of the submitted budget, they deemed some items that we had thought would be eligible as ineligible, but then some other items where we thought they would be ineligible, they deemed eligible. And so we ended up with a net gain of the calculated MSBA grant of $561,311. So I passed out an 11 by 17 spreadsheet and an 8.5 by 11. But the 8.5 by 11 spreadsheet summarizes the position where the committee saw itself at the August 28th SBC meeting, when the committee reviewed all the values that we were submitting to the MSBA. That's the left-hand column, and the column in the middle is what the current MSBA review is, and it shows an increase to the calculated maximum MSBA facilities grant of $561,311. So a modest increase in percentage of MSBA grant as 0.61%. So that's good. So that's a good thing, and so we anticipate the 8.5 by 11 spreadsheet is the MSBA's working document, but we expect the final values to be the same. But what the benefit of this document is that it has MSBA's comments, and they kind of comment on what they considered eligible and ineligible. But I think we're fortunate because the numbers that we estimated, we were actually in a better position. So we, with respect to what was reported with town share and potential property tax implications of this project, we are in a better position than we anticipated. So it was an estimate that was made conservatively and to good effect.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
So as people have a chance to look at this, we'd be happy to go through any of it all, but we just, for full transparency here and letting people sharing with the committee what the MSBA showed us at our working meeting, that's the document.
But the reimbursement is now broken $34 million. So we're going in the right direction in terms of a higher reimbursement.
Yes,
It seems like the others are working around the edges, if you will, correct?
right.
Very good. Mr. Superintendent, did you want to talk, Ellie, any elements of this, or Patrick?
We're happy to answer your questions, and Mr. Collins can add in, but I alluded earlier, we did make the case. There's a couple of areas where, and again, as we've spoken about before, the display that you've seen previously in the architect's presentations, where they have the colored bar charts that indicate sort of what the MSBA guideline is, where this project is additional square footage beyond that. but want to be really clear that even though it's beyond their template, the vast majority that they are participating in, that's the slide right there. So it's just beyond what their guideline is, but there's a very relatively small number of square footage that they're indicating that they will not participate. They explained to us that that is essentially based on their policy. When it comes to the gymnasium piece, you may recall that with the Sherwood project, our gymnasium was a little bit over guidelines, and we did convince them to participate in the full square footage of that. Since that time, they've created a policy that applies to all their projects, that they give a maximum number of gymnasium square footage, and that's what they stick to regardless of what the issue might be relative to, we were making the case about having full assemblies in there and that sort of thing. So we made a case, but they were firm on that piece. Similarly, in addition, that we put some more storage into the cafeteria based on our own experiences. We're a little bit over in that square footage, and that just is what it is. That's again, they're trying to maintain their budget, of course, at their level. But I think, and maybe Mr. Queenie can speak to this a bit, the demolition costs at the site was something that, in sort of our initial calculations, we were not expecting as much participation, but they are participating in most of that
Right, we were
cost.
very pleased with the demolition, because we generally, the MSBA for school projects participate in the demolition costs when you're demolishing an existing school that you're replacing. And we were imagining that the potential for the MSBA viewing the demolition as akin to site acquisition costs. And all site acquisition costs are ineligible, but they said, no, it's still demolition. You need to build a school, you need to demolish some other buildings. So they rather than having nearly 100% of the hazardous material abatement within the building that happens before the demolition, and the demolition costs themselves, we had going in, we had assumed virtually all of that to be not eligible. It turned out all but the cost to remove the fuel oil tanks and were deemed as eligible. So it was a very good result. That helped offset some other areas, so we came out net ahead.
The last area that we discussed with the folks from MSBA was that they were not deeming with the common spaces where we bump out the hallways, which is an excellent feature that we enjoy at Sherwood, we want to include in this project. It just went over their sort of total square footage piece, but what the MSBA did do was recognize that the actual grades 1 through 4 classrooms, our plan has them a little bit under their guideline. So they took the difference and applied that, which we thought was a fair outcome with that. We pushed for as much as we could get, but they did give us some allowance there as well. And I don't have the number right in front of me here. There's a lot of numbers in front of me, but I think in terms of, it would be important to note of the total square footage of the project, it's a relatively small percentage that is being deemed not eligible for MSBA participation, which is a very good outcome.
Right, and an important distinction is, the word ineligible, that's with respect to their funding. They're choosing not to participate in the funding of that, but they made it a very important distinction was that that word ineligible doesn't mean that they don't believe that space belongs in the building. For funding purposes, they want to preserve their funding for other projects, but they have no objection to the extra space in the gymnasium. They have no objection to they have no objection to the common spaces that are being used for educational purposes outside of the classrooms. They're just choosing not to fund it, and unfortunately, they don't. They've toured some schools where they've seen some of that common space be not used, so they have a little bit of a bias against it. Hopefully, we can take them to visit Sherwood Middle School again and visit this successful Beal School when it's in operation, and maybe over time they'll change that policy on the common spaces. But they're not objecting at all to the inclusion of the spaces in our building project.
Well, at some point, when you go through a variety of proposals, you just draw a line in the sand, and whether it be right, wrong, or indifferent, you're sticking at schools over 1,000 kids can get a bigger cafeteria, otherwise,
Yeah.
that's where you are.
Yeah.
But my quick calculations, Joe, was well under 5% of the total, 141,000. The first two items were under 2,000 square feet, so it is a relatively small but important element within the building. Patrick?
Yeah, in fact, I would just elaborate a little bit more at the, the guideline was 114,500. Our project is over their guideline, as Mr. Queenie said, which is simply a guideline by 27,000 square feet, but they're going to reimburse for over 18,000 square foot.
Yeah.
So the vast majority, they are participating financially in reimbursement. And, to the point that Dr. Sorer is making around the gymnasium, that there's a rationale for the size of that gymnasium. And we worked with our project team on this, and that is, and with the principals, in order to have an all-school assembly, you have to have a certain minimum amount of square footage by building code and fire code in order to allow all of the students and staff to actually have an assembly. And that's an important part of our school culture. So that's one of the rationales around that piece. The other thing I guess I would just find, I found important to reiterate here that when the MSBA goes through this process and they make a financial commitment, which they are planning to do on October 31st, contingent upon local approval, they are approving this financial commitment in their participation. And of course, the marketplace is going to determine the construction cost, right? And so we've got all these estimates. We've got a series of estimates from independent estimators to the project team in order to devise and project what the market conditions are going to tell us when we open up bids. When the MSBA makes a commitment, that's their maximum commitment, regardless of the bid situation. So for example, if the bids come in lower, they will reduce their participation accordingly. If the bids come in higher, then we own that cost locally 100%. So therefore, it's really important to have very accurate estimates that reflect the marketplace. But the estimates don't determine what we're going to pay. The marketplace determines what we're going to pay based upon the bids. So that's why you want to be, if anything, you want to be a little bit high on your estimating. And bring that to the local approval process, because if you were estimating low and you got a commitment from MSBA, but your bids were higher, we're going to own all that additional cost. So that's just another important point that I thought worth mentioning here at the building committee meeting, and hopefully that the community would understand. Thank you.
And what
Any
was
other
the-
questions?
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we could add one other thing as far as the space summary. We had mentioned this quite a few times along in the process, that the DESE reviews the special education spaces, and that MSBA defers to them as far as their approval. 100% of the special education spaces that were over the guidelines that MSBA deems were approved. They're being 100% participated in, just in case that wasn't clear in saying that DESE had no issues with the way the program was written, but that's, just want to kind of add that.
Thank you. Paul?
And, this is a robust spreadsheet, and so any change, you could do what-if scenarios, and you can see if the MSBA would have done something differently here or there, you can see the end result. But what PMA and LPA could also tell you is that we deal with the MSBA on project after project, and we find that they deal with all municipalities consistently. So that even if it feels like it's a tough policy, it's consistent across the board. They don't play favorites, and so that's a good thing.
Any other questions? John?
We have no builder's risk insurance in here. I see owner's insurance $0.
Right, we right now, in our budget, we're carrying it as the contractor would be carrying the builder's risk policy and for the project. So the money's in the budget. If we choose to have these, there are some projects where the owner carries a builder's risk. If we choose to do that, it would just be transferring it out of the building's contract scope and into the owner's scope. So there is money in there for builder's risk insurance. It's just carried under the GMP for the construction cost. But we'd be happy to talk about the strategies, maybe also with the town's insurance advisors too. What's the best way?
Lack of builder's risk almost proved disastrous down at Oak Middle School.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about moving that out of the, I've seen it done both ways, so I think we should talk some more about that between now and mid-2019 when we structure the GMP.
Very good. Any other questions on 4A? Anything else from you, Paul?
Did he talk about the schematic design review and all that?
Yeah, they did
Okay,
their
yeah.
piece first.
Anything else on that first?
Nope, not until we get down here.
Okay, then we'll go on to item 5, which is the discussion of CM at-risk statements of qualifications submitted by the following firms. We received 8 submittals from firms Agostini Construction from East Providence, Consigli from Milford, DeMayo from Providence, Fontaine Brothers from Springfield, Gilbane from Boston, W.T. Rich Company from Newton, Shawmut Design and Construction from Boston, and Whiting Turner Contracting from Springfield, Mass. Paul?
So we have a strong interest in the project. That's good news. Yet the pre-qualification committee has more work to do. But we have to review these 8 statements of qualifications and decide how many of these 8 to shortlist and invite into interviews for the second stage of this 2-stage process. But I would say, based upon preliminary review, there's some very strong firms here, and I think what's going to distinguish some of the firms from the other is actually the personnel proposed for each of these firms. So that would be a number of factors, evaluation criteria come into play, the qualifications of the firm, the experience of the firm, but also the people that the firm is proposing on the project. Those will weigh heavily also. So that is often for two firms that seem to be evenly matched, sometimes the one with the stronger team is the one that is preferred. So we will, after this meeting, the members of the pre-qualification committee will just meet to decide how the review is going. There's a lot to review here, and we'll convene a session where we can develop the short list. But we're in a good position. There's a lot of very strong. Every firm here is capable of building the job. And then there's some particularly good firms that we feel would give us a very good project.
Any other questions? No? Anything else, Paul,
Anything else?
on that item?
No, that's it.
I think we took item 6 and blended it in before, discussion of the in-process total project cost with MSBA.
Yeah.
Item 7 is a correspondence of a letter from the MSBA's Mary Pichetti regarding comments on the schematic design submission. Would anyone like to touch that in particular? Is anything to be covered? I think we covered it in the earlier conversation. Mr. Superintendent, anything further?
No, same thing, very few comments,
Yep.
and they were all
Yeah.
addressed.
And I would say, that all the comments have been responded to, and this is probably the shortest document with MSBA comments on a schematic design that I've seen. So in my mind, that is reflective of the completeness of the submittal and the quality of the submittal.
Very good. Any other questions? Then we'll move on from item 7 to set the date for our next meeting, which is, I believe, 6:30 on the 22nd, prior to town meeting. If there's anything that the committee would like to meet on at that time, we'll just legally place that so we can meet at 6:30, and we'll hold it open in a well. Then after that, our next meeting would be, the 13th of November. And either we plow on or have a lot of extra time on our hands. So we'll see what happens.
Did you want the finance committee on?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, thank you very much. Yes, and please, if we could all go to the Finance Committee on the 18th, a couple of Thursdays, so that we can present to them the proposal for the school.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak on a couple of the
Of
dates
course.
as well? Tomorrow evening, which is October 10th, the school committee is holding a public hearing on the project. That public hearing will begin at approximately 7:45 p.m. Subsequent to that, school committee will take a vote on a resolution of support for the project. Mr. Collins and I will be providing some updated information, the things that you heard tonight summarized for the school committee. In addition to that, Mr. Girardi has another tour of the existing Beal Early Childhood Center scheduled for Tuesday, October 16th, from 5 to 6 p.m. And I appreciate Mr. Girardi making himself available, as he has several times already, to provide opportunities for citizens to look at the condition of the current building. So people who are available and interested, they're welcome to attend those two dates and times.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else?
Are we going to set a meeting for the subcommittee?
I was leaving that up to the subcommittee, but certainly you can take time right now, John, and see what would work for the subcommittee.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are difficult for me.
Okay? Perhaps the committee could, subcommittee could hang in afterwards and work out a
Pulling
few
up Katie's days now.
meeting times. Having said that, if there's anything else to come before the committee, we can deal with it now. Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn at 6:45. All those in favor, shall signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, we are unanimous and adjourned. Thank you all very much. We'll see you